Hey everybody, it's Tim at Broken Dice bringing you another little installment of my solo battle report of Rome in Iberia. This is the Romans versus the Laietani and the kind of the northeast corner of the peninsula. This is turn 2, so let's go ahead and get into it. All right. The Iberians have the first turn and they declared charges all across the front. Just a quick little backdrop. I'm playing on a much narrower table, so I've reduced the amount of movement and ranges of shooting and stuff like that to compensate for the lack of space available. So these brown arrows all show the directions of the units charging. And I want you to pay particular attention to the Iberian general and his guard unit charging that cohort to their front, and the larger brown arrow to the right indicates a unit that will be supporting them in the upcoming combat. Here we go again. We see some more close-ups of the battlefield and some charges that are being made by a couple of units of Scutari. The one in the front will be engaging, and the one behind obviously will be supporting. Okay, again, you can see that unit moving in to support the Scutari that are fighting against the first cohort. It was surprisingly pretty much even up that first turn. We'll see what goes on here. Oh yeah, there we go, moves to support. Okay, and over on the far right of the battlefield, the poor 7th cohort was kind of dangling out in midair, and now it's going to find itself charged in both the front and the side. Oh, here we go. They can see that they've moved in for the charge. All right, let's get into the combat. Okay, this 2 units of Scutari fighting against this. This would be the 3rd cohort. Actually, I was very surprised. The Scutari did very well in this combat. Yeah, disordered them, pushed them back. Yeah, it was quite the little surprise for me, because rarely do I see the Scutari do very well against Roman cohorts. You really have to do like supported attacks against a single cohort if you really want to have any chance of really breaking them or anything, because it's very difficult with their stat line and the things that they can do, and just the fact that sometimes I just think the dice favor the Romans. All right, okay, here you can see they've lost the combat and they've fallen back in disorder. Here we have a small little fight between some skirmishing units. Oh, and the skirmishers fall. That I was kind of surprised at. I thought it would be like one of those, like, nobody has a significant advantage and they'd just be sitting there slapping away at each other the entire time. And then, oh, this is it. This is it. Look at this big fight in the middle. We've got the 5th cohort with the front line commander supported by a unit of javelin armed skirmishers fighting against this horde of very torqued off Iberians. And here we have the poor 7th that's being just pounded by the cavalry, the unit to the front, and then some Celt Iberians behind. It's going to be a tough fight for them. Boom, they didn't make it. Yeah, it was awful. It was awful. They took so much damage, and then losing the combat the way they did, it was almost inevitable with the math. Here we can see that they have opened up now from there and having to face different units because of proximity and the fact that they wiped out that unit on the charge, so they get that one little move, but because of the reduced distances, nobody was going to make it into combat. Here, let's on the back on the other side of the battlefield with the first cohort fighting 2 units of Scutari. Yeah, the Scutari won, even though the front unit became shaken. Uh, they they still forced the first cohort to fall back, but they fell back in good order though. They were not disordered, and that may play a well. I can just tell you right now, it's going to play a significant role in the Roman part of turn 2. And here we are back in this big melee in the middle, the big combat. God, I mean, you've got the army general for the Iberians. You've got his basically a guard unit, his best unit, plus being supported. Yeah, boom, boom. Not only did the guard unit break, the support broke, the general died. It was just such a disaster. And they only did like maybe 1 point of damage or 2 points of damage, if any. As a matter of fact, in my notes, it actually says they did 0 damage. Now, you think about the number of attacks. This was you get this, you had the general in there giving support, had a large guard unit, basically. So, a lot. It would have been an 8 on the clash, an 8 on sustained. Um, Plus, because they're a guard unit, they had +1 to their morale and everything, and just wound up rolling so horrendously. You know, it's almost one of those points where when you roll it, when you're doing solo battle reports and just solo games, it's almost like you have that urge to say, that is just so odd and so weird. I'm just not going to do that. But I can't do that because that's why you play is those weird, odd. If everything is just mathematically true, then where it always works out in the percentages. I mean, why play? It's these oddities like this. I mean, it must have seemed like they ran up against a brick wall. But that was hilarious to me. I was dumbfounded by the poor rolling by the Iberians and the fact that they not only did they lose the combat, and they only lost the combat by a tiny bit. I mean, the Romans didn't do a stellar job, but I rolled so poorly it was just destined to be. And then once they've done that, they turn to face the nearest units of the enemy. Roman order phase and combat. Okay. The first cohort, because they weren't disordered, they just fell back in good order. And so the Roman turn, they charged in against those Scutari that pushed them back. Okay, here you can see much more of the battlefield and what's going on. The cavalry down here in the left, they did not get into combat. Again, you must. They passed their order, but they only moved like 1 time, so it was only like 5 inches because, like I said, I've reduced the movement and the shooting it by half because I'm playing on a smaller table. So they did not make it into combat. But the first cohort there with the yellow and black shields, they made it in. Now up here at the top, you can see what would be the second and fourth cohorts. They're moving up to support, along with this Scorpion, to support the third cohort against the victorious Scutari and the light infantry. Okay, over here on the far right, you can see that the cohort at the top, which would be the sixth cohort, has turned to face the advancing Iberians, and the fifth has charged in against a unit of Celt Iberians. Here's a little close-up. They've got the frontline commander with them. Yeah, that poor Scutari and the Scutari supports, they broke. So basically, the Iberian left. The only thing they have left is one unit of infantry, so they've lost cavalry, and 3 units of or 2 units of infantry. So yeah, they're ready to bolt, and they'll be broken, and they'll have to move off the table. Here we have another large combat for the Iberians. They've just followed up. They're fighting the third cohort. In comes the second and the fourth to lend support. So power-wise, you see this as a tremendous advantage for the Romans, even though the third with the blue shields there are disordered. Wow. Yeah. The Scutari won again. Even with all that Roman support, they were able to push the units back. I was amazed at this dice. It's like it's crazy on this combat and it's crazy over here, because I really thought this would have been the end. This was a very pivotal moment in the game, because if these guys broke, it was all over with, because the army general's gone, his guard unit is gone. Yeah, it was going to be over in a hurry. Here we see another angle of the 5th cohort, which had destroyed the Iberian general and his guard unit, facing off against these Celtiberians. Yeah, and we go back to the middle here, and you can see they've pushed both those supporting units and that 3rd cohort back. I just find that fascinating. Now, obviously, they're in a very unenviable position. Their winning has pushed them so far deep into the Romans that now both flanks are open, and it could be pretty bad for them fairly quickly. Here's another angle of that same combat. You can see how far they pushed them back towards the edge of the table, because they started kind of at the beginning part of this hill that's over on the left-hand side of the photo. So yeah, they pushed them back quite a bit. And here we are, they're just glaring at the cohort now, because they couldn't reach them. And we're bringing it down here towards the end. That was the end of the combat. Here's a kind of a full look at the battlefield as it is. The center has been just devastated. The Iberian center has just been devastated by the Romans. All those extra units that the Iberians have available to them are going to be able to come in, but since the Iberian general is dead, there's no re-roll. I mean, I have a commander, but I'm not so sure he should automatically get the re-roll of a regular commander. I'm not sure if that's really addressed in the rule book. I know I've got another guy in line, and he is one less, so he's the army general, and he is at an 8. Does he automatically get the re-rolls and stuff? So I'm going to read over the rules and see how I might dice it off. I don't know. I'm going to see, because it's going to be very difficult for them to bring in those reserves now, because what's really going to be important is what happens in this big combat up in the middle. With the Scutari winning and pushing them back, they're still going to have the advantage in this combat. But if they happen to lose and break, bringing in those reserves at this point in time would be a useless gesture, I would think. Besides, it would be 2 broken divisions, or you got 1 division that's broken and doesn't need much to break another. So that would end this game, and these victorious Romans would be on their way to influence the next battle. Even with their losses, I think there'll be enough strength there to do some serious harm. So I'm going to have to decide what's going on here. All right, that brings us to the end of turn 2. I hope you guys kind of like this sort of thing. I like doing this. It gives me a way of staying um, involved with the rule system that I really enjoy. Get some models out on the table, push them around, roll some dice. Um, I've got some other things coming up that I plan on doing to add a little spice to the game, and I'll do another video on that. For, let's see, I'm not going to be doing any more of these sort of battle reports for the summer. I usually like to wait for the fall and the winter bad weather months to do these sort of things because I can really get into them because there's that much to do outside. So I'll be doing more of that later on, but I will be doing some other, maybe like just like a one-off battle or something every once in a while to throw in along with the other kind of content that I put on my channel. But if you like this kind of thing, give it a thumbs up, share it around. Um, Leave a comment down below. What are you doing? Are you a solo war gamer? Do you put your models out on the table and just practice with your rules? And what system do you use? What games do you like to use? What sort of time period are you doing this in? I'd be very much interested in that. Well, that's all for me. Everybody stay safe, stay well, and I will see you next time.